The bullet hit Vincenzo Romano before he even heard the shot. 1 second he was stepping out of Giuseppe's, buttoning his coat against the November chill, and the next, his shoulder exploded in white-hot fire, and he was spinning into the brick wall behind him. His two men, Marco and Dario, were already drawing, already screaming into earpieces, already pushing toward the black SUV that had crept up from the south end of the block with its headlights off. Glass shattered. A woman screamed somewhere close and then somewhere farther. Car alarms shrieked to life all at once, layering over each other into a wall of noise that would have been disorienting to anyone not trained to filter chaos into component parts. Vincenzo pressed himself against the wall and looked down at his shoulder. Blood. Dark, spreading fast through the gray wool of his jacket. He had been shot before, once in the thigh 12 years ago during a warehouse dispute that cost him $2.5 million in product. But that pain was nothing like this. This was deep. This was structural. Something was wrong in a way that didn't hurt yet, but would, the moment the adrenaline thinned. Don Vincenzo, the car. Marco was right there, arm already reaching. The shooter, Vincenzo said. His voice came out calmer than he felt. That was the thing about 20 years in this life. Your voice learned to lie before your brain caught up. You spoke slowly and the world around you slowed with it, at least long enough to think. Gone, south side. We're moving, Don, we have to move. How many? 2 we saw, possibly a third on the east roof. We're moving. The car is around. And then he heard it. Not a scream, not another gunshot. Something smaller than either, and completely, inexplicably out of place inside all that chaos. Humming. Vincenzo turned his head and there, less than 10 feet away, crouched behind an overturned metal trash can at the mouth of the alley beside the restaurant, was a child. A boy. 7, maybe 8 years old, in a red jacket with one broken zipper pull and paint stains on the knees of his jeans. He was rocking slightly on his heels, hands pressed flat against his ears, eyes squeezed shut, humming the same 4 notes over and over in a tight, desperate inward loop, like a machine trying to restart itself in a power failure. He wasn't running. He wasn't crying out for anyone. He was just there, completely sealed inside himself while the world outside disintegrated. Something in Vincenzo's chest shifted. Not sentiment. He would not have called it that. Not then, not for years afterward. Something more like recognition. The specific ache of seeing someone manage an overwhelming world with whatever small tools they had. Don Romano. Dario started from behind him. Get the car around the corner. South Alley. Now. But sir, you're... Now. He pushed off the wall. His shoulder screamed. He crossed the 10 feet to the boy in 4 strides, crouched down in the way that made his wound pull and burn, and put himself between the child and the open street with his back to whatever might still be coming from the south. Hey, he said quietly, right at the boy's level. The boy didn't open his eyes. The humming continued, frantic and contained. Hey, it's done. The loud is done. The humming slowed the smallest amount. The 4-note loop dropped half a step in pitch, like a statement becoming a question. I've got you, Vincenzo said. He didn't know why he said it. He hadn't said those words to anyone in years. They came out of somewhere that hadn't been used in so long he'd assumed it was closed. And then footsteps, fast, panicked, running on concrete from the alley entrance, and a woman appeared at the edge of the streetlight. She stopped dead when she saw them. Her face went through about 9 different things in the space of 2 seconds. Terror collapsing into relief, relief folding into confusion, and then something else. Something that moved through the muscles around her eyes in a way that looked like grief and joy combined into something with no clean name. Vincenzo looked at her. Everything in him went still. Isabella. Not a ghost, not a trick of blood loss and bad light. Isabella Caruso. His Isabella. Only she hadn't been that in 6 years, and she was staring at him with her hands pressed over her mouth and her dark eyes filling with something that looked nothing like welcome. She looked exactly like herself. The same eyes, the same dark hair pulled back with that particular careless precision she'd always had. The same posture, straight, watchful, ready, that he had always read as strength and that he now understood had always been armor. She looked like herself, and also like someone who had been living a life he knew nothing about, and both of those things were true at the same time in a way that made the alley seem to tilt. "Luca," she said. Her voice broke on the single syllable. "Luca, come here! Baby, come here!" The boy, Luca, opened his eyes for the first time. He looked at Vincenzo first, not at his mother, with an expression of total, unsentimental assessment, the way an engineer looks at a structure before deciding whether it will support weight. Then he looked at Isabella. Then, apparently having completed his evaluation, he stood up, walked past Vincenzo with the specific deliberateness of someone who does not move faster than they have decided to move, and tucked himself under his mother's arm. Vincenzo tried to stand. His body sent him a very clear message about the terms of that negotiation. He made it halfway before the alley tilted hard left and the wall came toward him. "Vincenzo." Isabella's voice, closer, moving. He caught himself on one knee, pressed his hand to his shoulder. His palm came away dark and wet. "I'm fine," he said. "You're very much not fine," she said. She was crouched in front of him now, Luca still tucked against her side, and she was looking at the wound with the flat, steady eyes of a woman who has learned to see damage clearly and make decisions without flinching. "You need a hospital. I need my car." "Your car is not going to fix the hole in your shoulder, Vincenzo." He looked at her. She looked back. 6 years, and she still talked to him exactly like that, without the fear that most people carried around him, without the deference that everyone else performed, with the direct, slightly impatient honesty of someone who had never been able to make herself pretend. "Take him away from here first," Vincenzo said. "Get him somewhere safe. My people will handle—" "Your people are parked around the corner waiting for a signal," she said. "Luca." She said it without looking away from Vincenzo. "Stay right here. Don't move. Can you do that?" Luca, who had been examining the moisture pattern on the brick wall beside him with focused attention, gave a single nod without turning around. Isabella pulled out her phone. "What are you doing?" Vincenzo said. "Calling someone." "Isabella, you can't call. I know who I can and cannot call," she said, with the patience of someone explaining something obvious. "I'm not calling the police. I'm calling Dr. Ferretti. He treated you before, he knows how to be discreet, and he's 12 minutes away." She was already dialing. "Don't argue. You'll lose." He had always lost with her. He had never figured out whether that was a flaw in him or a quality in her. She made the call. Then she looked at Luca, who had progressed from the moisture pattern to counting the rows of brickwork above the alley door. "Luca, we're going to help this man. He's going to be okay." "He's bleeding significantly," Luca said, still without turning. "He is," Isabella said, "but he's going to be okay." Luca turned around. He looked at Vincenzo with those direct, measuring eyes. "Is it arterial?" he asked. Vincenzo blinked. "No." "Good. Arterial is very bad. I read about it." He went back to counting bricks. "You should stay still. Movement increases the heart rate, and that makes the bleeding worse." "He's right," Isabella said with the fond exhaustion of someone who had been told correct but inconvenient facts by the same source for 7 years. Vincenzo stayed still. He woke up in a room that smelled like antiseptic and expensive quiet. Private, clearly, the kind of space where money smoothed away inconvenience and questions both. Clean white ceiling, monitors that beeped at considerate intervals, Blackout curtains pulled across a window that was letting in a stripe of morning light along its bottom edge. His shoulder was packed and bandaged and elevated in a way that made his left arm feel like it belonged to someone he had never met. There was an IV in his right arm. His mouth tasted like copper and old sleep and something chemical underneath both. He turned his head. Luca was sitting in the chair beside his bed. Not sleeping, not restless. Sitting with a large sketch pad across his knees and a pencil moving in slow, completely certain strokes, his face arranged in the concentration of someone for whom the room around him has effectively ceased to exist. He was drawing. The pencil moved in circles, then in long vertical lines, then in something curved and deliberate. He was completely absorbed in a way that reminded Vincenzo, unexpectedly, of the way he himself felt when working through a problem that required total focus. That specific quality of presence that left no room for distraction because the mind was entirely somewhere else. "What are you drawing?" Vincenzo asked. His voice came out rough and lower than usual. Luca didn't look up. The pencil didn't pause. "The ceiling light," he said. "It has 47 panels. The central mounting has a microfracture in the northeast bracket. Someone tried to fix it with the wrong grade of adhesive. You can see the discoloration." Vincenzo looked at the ceiling. It was a standard recessed fixture grid. He counted sections for a moment before giving up. He had absolutely no way to verify the 47, but the certainty in the boy's voice made the number feel like established fact. "You counted them," Vincenzo said. "Yes, counting helps when the environment is new." A pause during which the pencil moved in an arc. "You were making a sound like a radiator last night." "A radiator. Low, uneven breathing. It means air in the line, or pain." He looked up for the first time, the same careful, assessing eyes. "Are you in pain now?" "Some," Vincenzo said. Luca looked back at his drawing. "My mother is in the hallway. She has been there since 4:42 in the morning. I know because I checked the clock when I heard her sit down." He added a line with deliberate care. "She does not usually leave me alone with strangers." Vincenzo absorbed this in the careful way he absorbed intelligence from people he had underestimated before. "Why did she leave you with me?" Luca considered this with the same investment he gave to ceiling panels. "I asked her," he said. "She said, because you would not hurt me." A pause. "She also cried. In the hallway. I could hear her through the door. She thought I was asleep." Something moved in Vincenzo's chest that had no name and nowhere to go and nothing to do with the wound in his shoulder. The door opened and Isabella stepped in. She stopped when she saw his eyes open and did that complicated rearrangement of her face again. A rapid resettling, an adjustment. She had always been expressive in spite of herself, her face doing what it wanted before her control caught up. "You're awake," she said. "Apparently," he said. She came to the opposite side of the bed from Luca and sat in the second chair with her hands folded in her lap. She was wearing yesterday's clothes. The shadows under her eyes were the specific kind that come from sitting in a hallway through a whole night thinking things you can't put down and can't resolve. "The bullet didn't hit anything important," she said, in the tone of someone delivering a report they have been rehearsing. "Cracked the clavicle. Significant muscle damage. Dr. Ferretti says 6 weeks minimum in the sling. No physical activity. No stress." A beat. "That second item may be aspirational." "Ferretti," Vincenzo said, "you still have his number." "He was my doctor before he was yours," she said, with the precision of someone who maintains their own history clearly. Vincenzo looked at her, then at the boy bent over the sketchbook, then back at her. He said it quietly, but he said it. "How old is he?" Isabella's hands tightened in her lap. "Isabella." "7," she said. "7." He did the arithmetic the way you do when you're hoping the numbers come out wrong. They didn't. They came out very, very right in a way that made the room feel smaller and larger at the same time. Isabella, not here. Her voice was steady, but at cost. Not now. He can hear everything. He always has been able to. When then? She looked at Luca, who had moved from the ceiling fixture to a careful study of the IV stand's adjustment mechanism. Tonight, after he sleeps. She met Vincenzo's eyes, and in hers was the full complexity of 6 years he hadn't been present for. Grief and anger, and something protective, and something that hadn't entirely closed. He doesn't know. He has asked about his father. I have told him that his father and I knew each other a long time ago, and that things are complicated. That is all he has. A pause. I need you to understand that before we say anything else. Vincenzo looked at his son. His son, narrating the tolerances of a medical IV stand with the gravity of a doctoral candidate, completely unaware that the bleeding man in the bed beside him was the father who had never known he existed. Okay, Vincenzo said. No, he had negotiated peace between men who had buried each other's brothers. He had kept his face still through things that would have destroyed men with softer cores. He kept his face still now. He kept it still, and it cost him more than any of those other things ever had. That night, after Luca had arranged his pencils in precise parallel order along the edge of the fold-out cot, graphite to lightest, lightest to darkest, an ordering system he had explained to Vincenzo with complete seriousness as the only logical approach, and after he had said goodnight with a formal nod that was more courtesy than warmth, and after he had gone under in the immediate, total way that children sleep when they have spent their energy completely, Isabella sat in the chair beside Vincenzo's bed and told him what he had missed. She talked for almost 2 hours. The monitors beeped their patient rhythms. The hallway outside quieted as the hospital settled. Vincenzo did not interrupt once. He had learned, over 20 years of listening to things people would rather not say, that some conversations collapse if you put a single word in the wrong place. She told him about the night she left. 6 years ago, 3 weeks after the Ravello warehouse fire that had taken 3 lives and nearly a fourth. She told him about the month of police presence. The depositions, the surveillance vans outside their building, the cold, widening certainty that she had built her life inside something that would eventually consume everything she loved. She told him she had known by then that she was pregnant. She had not told him. She told him this without apology and without softening it, looking directly at him in the low light of the hospital room. She had gone to her sister in Philadelphia, had built something small and careful and quiet in a neighborhood where nobody knew her last name and nobody cared. When Luca was born, she had watched for the things that worried her in those first weeks. The way he cataloged rather than played. The way language came in concentrated bursts and then went silent for whole days. The way certain textures could undo him in seconds, and certain sounds could send him to the floor. By 2, she had a name for what she was seeing. By 3, she had therapists and specialists and a school that understood what Luca needed. By 4, she had found, to her own slow amazement, that she was not managing a problem. She was raising a person, a singular, specific, remarkable person who experienced the world with an intensity that still sometimes made her stop and stare, who had taught her more about attention and honesty than anyone she had ever met. She did not present it as easy. She presented it as the realest thing she had ever done. He draws everything, she said. Buildings, machines, the internal logic of objects he's taken apart to understand. He disassembled our kitchen timer last year and drew a cross-section of it from memory, perfectly to scale. Something moved across her face, half exasperation, half pure pride. He was also furious that the timer no longer worked. He's a structural engineer, Vincenzo said. He's 7, she said. Both can be true. She looked at him with the particular expression she had always deployed when he said something she hadn't expected. Then, carefully, "Why didn't you tell me?" Vincenzo asked. "Even after, even a year later. I would have—" "What?" she said quietly. "What would you have done?" He thought about it honestly, the way you can only when the question is in the past and the answer can't change anything. "I don't know," he said. "I know," she said. That was the problem. They sat with that for a while. The pencils on the cot lay in their perfect ordered row. "He's remarkable," Vincenzo said. Something softened in Isabella's expression. Not forgiveness. Not yet. Nowhere near yet. But it's neighboring country. Recognition. The specific thing that happens when someone sees what you have been seeing all along and understands, finally, what it has meant. "Yes," she said. "He is." The next 3 days were the strangest of Vincenzo Romano's life, and he had lived a life that most people only encounter in the pages of federal case files. The strangeness was not dramatic. It was quiet. It arrived each morning in the form of a 7-year-old who came in with his sketchbook, took the chair beside the bed, and drew. Sometimes Luca narrated. Sometimes he asked questions with no preamble and no warning, the way children ask when they have not yet learned that there are questions adults find inconvenient. On the second morning, why do hospital gowns open at the back instead of the front? The front would be more efficient. On the third, your heartbeat was 72 yesterday. It's 68 today. Lower is usually better except when it indicates poor circulation. On the fourth, pencil still moving, eyes still down. My mother says you knew each other before. Vincenzo had been preparing for something like this in the quiet hours, had been rehearsing careful, honest, age-appropriate answers that wouldn't lie and wouldn't say too much. "Yes," he said. "We knew each other." "When?" "A long time ago." "How long?" "Before you were born." A long pause. The pencil moved. "She doesn't talk about before. I've asked several times. She redirects the conversation." He looked up. "You redirected just now, too. You said a long time ago instead of giving me the actual number of years." "Did I?" 7 years, 3 months, and approximately 12 days. Luca said, right? Based on my age and what little she has told me, I calculated it. Vincenzo looked at his son. "You're very precise," he said. "Yes," Luca said. "Imprecision makes things harder. If information is available, it should be accurate." He went back to his drawing. "She changes the subject because she's sad about it. I know because her voice changes pitch by about a third of a step when she talks about sad things. She probably doesn't know I've noticed." Vincenzo turned his head toward the window. Counted to 4. Turned back. "Changing the subject doesn't make the thing go away," Luca said. "No," Vincenzo said. "It doesn't." "I know." A pause. "Did you know her when she was happy?" The question found the specific unprotected place that Vincenzo had not known was still open. He looked at the bent dark head, the particular wave in the hair, which was his, which he was only now allowing himself to register, and said carefully, "She was very happy once." "Yes." "Good," Luca said, in the tone of a confirmed data point. "She is happy now, too, a different kind. She laughs differently than she used to. I've seen photographs of before. She has a box of them in her closet, though I'm not supposed to know that." He added a precise line to the IV stand sketch. "When she laughs now, it takes longer to start. But when it does, it changes the whole room." Vincenzo turned toward the window again. He stayed there for a while. "If you are still here and this story has gotten under your skin, hit subscribe right now and ring the notification bell so you never miss a new drop. And if you want to go further, the link in the description lets you buy the channel a coffee. It genuinely keeps us going. Now stay with us because we are just getting to the part that changes everything. On the fourth day, Marco appeared. He waited until Luca was in the hospital's activity room and Isabella had stepped out to take a call, then slipped into the room with the practiced silence of a man for whom quiet movement had always been a professional necessity. 11 years as Vincenzo II had given Marco a face that disclosed very little, but Vincenzo had learned to read what wasn't on that face as clearly as what was. Don Romano, Marco said, standing at the foot of the bed. The Falcone family is making inquiries. What kind? The kind that precede decisions. He held Vincenzo's gaze without flinching. They are interpreting your absence from operations as a signal, weakness or departure. Neither reads well right now. It has been 4 days. In this business, 4 days can be long enough. Marco's jaw tightened. There was also an incident at the Lentini warehouse last night. Minor, but it was deliberate. A message. Vincenzo looked at the ceiling. He counted the panels the way Luca had taught him, not because he needed the number, but because the act of counting settled something in his mind. He got to 30 before he stopped. Tell them I will be in contact by Friday, he said. In person. And between now and Friday, if they move again, they won't, not until they hear from me. They're not stupid, they're testing, not committing. He looked at Marco. What else? Marco hesitated. The hesitation lasted perhaps half a second. It was enough. The woman, Marco said carefully. And the child. The men on rotation have noticed them. They're asking who they are and what the parameters are. Parameters? Whether they're to be protected, whether there are protocols. Vincenzo said, they're private individuals who assisted in an emergency. That's all anyone needs to know. Marco looked at him with 11 years of reading behind his eyes. He didn't say what he was thinking. He nodded once, turned, and paused at the door. The boy, he said. Dario was watching the block yesterday when they went to the park. Says the kid stood at the fountain for almost 20 minutes without moving. Dario radioed in, thought something was wrong. Nothing was wrong, Vincenzo said. He was counting the tiles. Marco absorbed this. The tiles, he said. There are 104 on the inside wall, 81 on the perimeter, 7 are cracked. The pattern skips in the northwest corner because of a repair in 1987. He met Marco's eyes. Tell Dario not to radio in unless there's an actual threat. The boy is fine. Marco looked at him for a moment with an expression Vincenzo had never seen on that particular face before. Then he left. Isabella came back to find Vincenzo sitting up against the pillows with a legal pad in his lap, writing. She stopped in the doorway. You're not supposed to be upright, she said. I've been upright my whole adult life, he said. Sit down. She sat. She looked at the legal pad without moving toward it. I need to know what you and Luca actually need, Vincenzo said. Not what you're afraid to ask for. Not what you're afraid I'll do with the information. What you actually need to live the life you've built. She was quiet for a long time. He has a school, she said finally. Specialists who know his full profile, his sensory triggers, his communication style, his learning patterns. It took 2 years to find a placement that worked. Any disruption to his routine, new environments, unexpected schedule changes, loud or chaotic spaces, can destabilize him for days. Days where he can't work, can't sleep, can't regulate himself. She paused. These last 4 days have been a disruption. How is he managing it? She looked at her hands. Better than I expected, she said slowly. Better than I would have predicted. He seems... She stopped, started again. He is comfortable around you. I don't know how to explain that because Luca is almost never comfortable with new people quickly. It usually takes months of consistent exposure. With you, it's been, she shook her head. He decided something. I don't know when, but whatever he decided, it is holding. What do you think he decided? Vincenzo asked. She met his eyes. That you were safe, she said. Actually safe. Not safe the way adults perform safety. Safe in the way Luca means it, which is more rigorous than what most people are evaluated by. Vincenzo said nothing. He didn't trust what might come out. I want to be clear about where I am, Isabella said. I am not where I was 6 years ago. I'm not running from anything, and I'm not angry in the way I was then. She looked at him directly. But I spent 6 years building something for him that works, something stable and specific and his. And I cannot let it be disrupted by someone walking back into our lives and bringing the same world with them. I know, Vincenzo said. Do you? Yes. He put the legal pad down. I'm not asking you to let me back into your life, Isabella. I'm asking for the chance to be in his. And I'm telling you that for that to be possible, the world I'm walking in now has to change. I'm telling you that because it's true, not because it's what you need to hear. She was quiet again. The kind of quiet that means thinking rather than doubt. He's going to ask you directly, she said. At some point. Maybe soon. He doesn't do well with information that's being withheld from him. He can sense it like a change in air pressure. When he asks, I need you to be ready to be honest. I'll be honest, Vincenzo said, with everything. With everything. She stood slowly, smoothed her jacket, looked at him with the full weight of 6 years and one impossible week behind her eyes. Don't make me regret giving you this, she said. I'm trying very hard to be someone you won't, he said. He was discharged on day 6. Marco had handled the Falcone situation with a phone call and a precise reminder about the construction permits on the East Corridor that Vincenzo controlled, which cooled the temperature sufficiently for the short term. His penthouse was swept, the building security doubled, the rotation arranged with quiet thoroughness. His arm went into a sling that he hated immediately and wore without complaint. He called Isabella that evening and asked if he could take Luca to the park the following morning. The fountain park, the one with the 104 tiles. The pause that followed was long enough that he counted it. 7 seconds. I'll bring him, she said. I'll be there. Of course, he said. He arrived at 9. No security visible, though Marco was a block north and Dario a block south, which was the best compromise between protection and the impression of it he could manage. The park was quiet in the particular way of early November mornings. An elderly man with a newspaper, 2 mothers with strollers, pigeons conducting their own business with complete indifference to everyone. Luca was already at the fountain. Isabella was on a bench 10 feet back watching. She gave Vincenzo a look that contained an entire conversation in one glance. I'm here, I'm watching, don't make me regret this. And then looked back at her son. Vincenzo walked to the fountain and stood beside Luca. They were quiet for a moment. Luca was counting. Vincenzo waited. 104 tiles on the inside wall, Luca said eventually. 81 around the perimeter, 7 cracked. The pattern breaks in the northwest quadrant because of the 1987 repair. He pointed to the small engraved plate at the fountain's base without looking at Vincenzo. It says so there. Vincenzo looked at the plate. Restored 1987. City Parks Department. He had walked past it 100 times without reading it. I looked you up, Luca said. He said it the way he said everything. Plainly, without theater, as though reporting a thing he had done that required no particular defense. Vincenzo was very still. On my mother's laptop, Luca continued, while she was making dinner on Thursday. Vincenzo Romano. He paused. There are quite a few results. Mostly news articles, some court records. Some of them describe things that are, he chose the word carefully, serious. Yes, Vincenzo said, that's true. Are you my father? The question landed so cleanly, without decoration or drama, that it almost seemed gentle. Almost. Yes, Vincenzo said. Luca was quiet. A pigeon landed on the fountain's rim, regarded them with orange-eyed suspicion, and departed. The elderly man turned a page of his newspaper. She should have told me, Luca said, not angry, observational. I don't function well without complete information. It makes it difficult to make good decisions. A pause. She knows this. She was trying to protect you, Vincenzo said, from a life that was dangerous. She was right that it was dangerous. But it was my information, Luca said, about my own life. Vincenzo had no answer that would improve on that. Yes, he said, it was. Another pause. The fountain ran steadily, indifferent to the weight of the conversation beside it. You took a bullet for me, Luca said, before you knew. Yes. You didn't know who I was. I was a stranger. Yes. Then why? Vincenzo looked at the fountain, then at the boy beside him, at the serious, precise face and the dark eyes that were his own eyes in a smaller version of his own face. Because you were a child and you were in danger, and that was all I needed to know, he said. Some things don't require more reason than that. Luca was very still, processing this. The pencil that was always near his hand found its way out of his jacket pocket. He looked at it for a moment, turned it over, put it back. Okay, he said. 2 letters, a single syllable. The most complete thing Vincenzo had ever been given. In the first week after his discharge, Vincenzo met his son 5 times. The meetings were short, an hour each, always at the fountain park, always with Isabella on the bench and Luca leading whatever activity he had decided on that day. Vincenzo followed his son's lead the way he had learned to follow no one else's, because Luca made it clear early and without malice that he was not interested in being rushed toward comfort. Comfort was something that accumulated through repeated exposure to consistent behavior, like a structure gaining load-bearing capacity through properly cured concrete. That was the metaphor Luca used, drawn from a book about civil engineering he had apparently read 3 times. Vincenzo found it completely accurate. On the first day, Luca had brought a field notebook and spent 40 minutes mapping the park's drainage gradient by observing where puddles from the previous night's rain had collected. He narrated his findings in a steady, unhurried monologue that required no response but seemed to benefit from an audience. Vincenzo listened with the full attention he had once reserved for intelligence briefings. Luca noticed. He didn't comment on it, but there was something in his posture, a slight fractional opening, that told Vincenzo the attention had been registered and filed. On the second day, Luca asked him about locks, not about the people who picked them or the reasons someone might want to. Just locks, how they worked, what made a good one, whether Vincenzo thought the deadbolt on Isabella's apartment door was adequate. Vincenzo, who had in his professional life developed more knowledge about locks and their vulnerabilities than any ordinary citizen would find reassuring, gave Luca a straightforward technical breakdown of the main lock types, their mechanisms, and their failure points. Luca listened with his eyes half closed and the notebook open, and when Vincenzo finished, Luca said, I thought so. The deadbolt is a Schlag B6ON. It's better than average, but not exceptional. I've been recommending she upgrade for 6 months. And? Vincenzo asked, worrying. She says it's fine. Luca closed the notebook. She's wrong. I'll have someone look at the door, Vincenzo said. Luca looked at him. A good someone? The best someone I know. Okay, Luca said, and went back to his notebook, apparently satisfied. On the third day, it rained, and Isabella suggested they reschedule. Luca, who had already put on his coat and his particular expression of fixed purpose, said that weather was not a sufficient reason to change a schedule unless the deviation was logged in advance in the planner. Since it had not been logged, the meeting would proceed as planned. Isabella looked at Vincenzo over Luca's head with an expression that said, "This is what my life is." Vincenzo looked back with an expression that said, "I completely understand." They stood in the rain at the fountain with Luca's sketchbook wrapped in a plastic sleeve he had prepared for exactly this eventuality, and Luca drew the fountain running in heavy rain. The way the water surface changed, the way the overflow channels activated. And it was the best drawing he had done yet. On the fourth day, Vincenzo brought coffee for himself and Isabella and a specific almond croissant from the bakery on the east side that he had been told, by Marco of all people, was the best in the city. He had not known why Marco knew this. He had not asked. He brought one for Luca and set it on the fountain's edge without comment. Luca looked at it. "I didn't ask for that," he said. "I know," Vincenzo said. "You don't have to eat it." Luca looked at it for another moment. "What bakery?" "Rossi's, east of the bridge." Luca picked up the croissant, examined it, set it back down. "Rossi's uses cultured butter," he said. "It is measurably better than the options within walking distance of our apartment." He picked it up again and took a careful bite. Then he said nothing more about it, but he finished the whole thing, and the next week he mentioned to Isabella that Rossi's was, technically, worth the detour. On the fifth day, Luca asked Vincenzo to tell him about the things he had done wrong. He said it just like that, without preamble, sitting on the fountain's edge with his feet not quite reaching the ground. Vincenzo was sitting beside him. They had gradually, over the 5 days, migrated from the park path to the fountain itself, closing the 10 feet between them inch by inch in a way that neither had commented on. The sun was out for the first time in days. "The things I've done wrong," Vincenzo repeated. "You have done things that were wrong," Luca said. "The news articles were clear about that. I am not asking for an excuse or an apology. I am asking for an honest description, because I prefer to know things accurately." Vincenzo sat with this for a moment. Beside them, Isabella had gone very still on her bench. "Yes," Vincenzo said. "I have done things that were wrong." "Tell me one," Luca said. "One. To start, if there are others I need to know, I'll ask." Vincenzo looked at the fountain, at the water running over the tiles his son had counted and mapped. "I made decisions," he said slowly, "that I told myself were necessary, that hurt people who didn't deserve to be hurt. I told myself the necessity made it acceptable. It didn't. Necessity and acceptability are different things. I confused them for a long time." Luca thought about this. "Did you know they were different at the time?" "Sometimes," Vincenzo said. "That's the part that was wrong." "Okay," Luca said. He looked at the water. "Are you still doing that?" "I'm trying not to be." "Are you succeeding?" Vincenzo thought about that honestly. "Getting better," he said. "Not finished." "That's an acceptable answer," Luca said. He kicked his feet slightly. "It's more honest than yes?" He looked sideways at Vincenzo. "My therapist says that the people who claim to be completely better from things that take a long time to be better from are usually still in the middle of it. She says real progress is slower and less dramatic." "Your therapist sounds smart," Vincenzo said. "She is," Luca said. "I tested her. She passed." Vincenzo almost smiled. "How did you test her?" "I asked her 3 questions with known answers and 1 question without a known answer. She answered the first 3 correctly and said she didn't know for the 4th. That's the right answer to a question without a known answer." He picked up his pencil. "Most people make something up." "Yes," Vincenzo said. "They do." Luca opened his sketchbook. "I don't," he said. If I don't know something, I say so. It's more useful. He found a blank page. You should try it. I'm learning, Vincenzo said. Good, Luca said, and began to draw. That evening, after the fifth visit, Vincenzo sat in his penthouse and wrote in the legal pad he had started in the hospital. He had been writing in it every night. The things he was unwinding, the calls he was making, the businesses he was separating from their less legitimate counterparts, the obligations he was closing out one at a time with the methodical patience of someone who has finally identified what he is being patient for. He was not done. He would not be done quickly. But the shape of it was clearer every day. He called Isabella at 9 o'clock. He asked me about the things I've done wrong today, Vincenzo said. A pause. I know, Isabella said. He told me. What did he tell you? He said you answered honestly. He said you told him necessity and acceptability were different things, and you had confused them. Another pause. He said he's adding you to his list. He told me, Vincenzo said. Did you know what the list was? He explained it. Isabella was quiet for a moment. He doesn't add people to that list easily, she said. I know, Vincenzo said. I have been on it for 7 years, she said. His therapist is on it, his teacher at school, one of the maintenance workers at the building who fixed a stuck window correctly the first time. He could hear the complicated affection in her voice. 4 people in 7 years. Now 5, Vincenzo said. Now 5, she said softly. They were quiet together for a moment, the kind of quiet that happens between people who have shared history that can't be undone and are trying to figure out what it means now. I'm making the Friday call, Vincenzo said. To Falcone. I have terms ready. Will they work? Yes, he said. They're good terms. Structured enough that he gains something and loses something and the balance makes sense to him. It won't be clean. There's no clean in this business, but it will be substantially different within 60 days. Substantially different, Isabella said. And that's a very lawyer phrase. 60 days, Vincenzo said. I'll give you a number by then. A real one. She was quiet again. Then, he wants to show you something on Thursday. He's been working on it for 3 days and won't tell me what it is. I'll be at the fountain, Vincenzo said. I know you will, she said. And 2 days later, at the fountain, Luca opened his sketchbook to a page he had been carefully protecting with a piece of cardboard as a makeshift cover, and showed Vincenzo the architectural drawing he had done from memory of the hospital room where they had first spoken. Every panel on the ceiling, correctly numbered. The IV stand with its adjustment mechanism detailed in cross-section in the margin. The fold-out cot with the pencils arranged along its edge. And in the chair beside the bed, drawn with the same meticulous precision as every structural element around it, a man. Not a famous man, not a frightening man, just a man in a hospital bed with his arm in a sling, turned toward the light of a window, his face in that open, unguarded moment between sleep and full wakefulness. The man in the drawing looked like someone who had made a great many mistakes and was, tentatively, in the early stages of something different. Vincenzo looked at the drawing for a long time without speaking. I drew it from memory, Luca said. I wanted to make sure I had it before it faded. Did it fade? Vincenzo asked. No, Luca said. Some things don't. 2 weeks later, on a cold Tuesday in November, the world tried to take it back. Vincenzo had been expecting something. The Falcone family had sent their message clearly enough. A broken window at his shipping office, a contact from one of his East Side managers who had received an unwelcome visit from men who asked pointed questions about Vincenzo's current arrangements. He had responded through the right channels with the measured counterpressure of a man who knows exactly which levers to push and how hard to push them. He believed he had bought time. He believed the temperature had dropped. He had miscalculated in the way that occasionally happens when you are thinking about something other than the threat in front of you. He was sitting at the fountain, their fountain now, the one where Luca was cross-legged on the ground with his sketchbook, carefully mapping the irregular northwest tile section, when Marco called. "East entrance," Marco said. "2 cars, not ours." Vincenzo was on his feet before Marco finished the sentence. He turned, and Luca was exactly where he'd been, 20 feet away, pencil moving, completely absorbed. Isabella was on the bench, and she saw Vincenzo's face change, and she was already rising. "Luca," Vincenzo said. Quiet. Level. The voice he used when volume would make everything worse. "Come here, please." Luca looked up from the sketchbook. He looked at Vincenzo's face and did the rapid, silent evaluation. Whatever it was he ran, that internal algorithm that measured safety in ways Vincenzo couldn't fully see, and then he stood without argument and walked toward them. "South Gate," Vincenzo said to Isabella, low and fast. "Marco is there. Don't stop." "Vincenzo, please." She looked at him for half a second. Then she took Luca's hand. Luca made a sharp sound of protest. Unexpected touch, no warning, the world not following its rules. And Isabella was already talking, low and sure, her voice finding that frequency that could reach him when nothing else could. They moved. The men from the east entered the park. Vincenzo counted them. 3 visible. Carmine in front. He recognized him from the Falcone docks. A careful man, professional, and 2 behind. The north approach would have a 4th. He couldn't see Marco's position yet. He ran the numbers quickly and didn't love what he got. "Don Romano," Carmine said, crossing the park path with his hands visible and his pace unhurried. The confidence of a man who believes he controls the situation. "Mr. Falcone sends his regards." "He sends them in person. It would be more impressive," Vincenzo said. Carmine's eyes moved to the south gate, to the path Isabella and Luca had taken, back to Vincenzo. "Heard you've developed some personal considerations," he said. "That's new." "People change. In this business, people who change tend to create complications." He stopped at 10 feet. "Mr. Falcone is willing to be reasonable. He just needs assurance that the current," he found the word, "distraction isn't going to become a liability." A sound from the north, Dario intercepting the 4th man. Good. Then the sound Vincenzo had been afraid of. 4 notes. Rising. Tight and desperate, looping in on themselves. He turned. Luca had broken from Isabella at the gate and was running back into the park. Not fast, Luca ran the way he did everything, with deliberateness. But the direction was wrong. The direction was toward the men, toward the open space, and Isabella was behind him calling his name in the voice that meant she had lost the thread and was trying to find it again. Vincenzo's body made the decision before his mind had completed processing the information. He moved. 1 arm in a sling, the shoulder held together with surgical wire and 6 weeks of incomplete healing. All of it irrelevant. He crossed the distance to Carmine and drove him sideways, hard, off the path, and took the second man's elbow across his injured shoulder and felt something inside tear in a way that was going to matter a great deal in roughly 40 minutes. Right now, it didn't matter at all. He turned himself to put his body between Luca and both men and stood there. Just stood there, breathing hard, the shoulder on fire, watching Carmine reassess the situation with the eyes of a professional who was now doing arithmetic. Marco came in from the left. Dario from the north? The 3rd man was already down on the grass. Carmine looked at Vincenzo, at the boy now clutching his sketchbook behind Vincenzo's back, at Vincenzo again. "Friday," Vincenzo said, breathing steady with effort. "Tell Falcone I will call Friday. We'll discuss terms that work for both parties. I have an offer he will find reasonable." He held Carmine's gaze. "This is over." Carmine looked at Luca one more time. Then he nodded. He left. When the black cars pulled away from the east entrance, Vincenzo turned around. Luca was standing directly behind him, sketchbook pressed against his chest, face in the processing state. That stillness that meant enormous amounts of work were being done behind it. Isabella arrived half a second later, slightly out of breath, color high, eyes moving from Vincenzo to Luca and back. "He's not hurt," Vincenzo said immediately. "I see that." She moved to Luca's side, put a hand on his back, gentle, expected, no surprise to it. "Luca, are you okay?" "Yes," Luca said. He was still looking at Vincenzo. "You did it again." Vincenzo looked down at him. "Yes. Your shoulder is worse now. I can tell from the way you're holding it." "Yes. You should go back to Dr. Ferretti." "I will." Luca looked at Vincenzo for a long moment. In that look was the calculation, the assessment, the rigorous internal process that Vincenzo had learned to wait for without rushing. Then Luca said, "You keep doing that." "Yes," Vincenzo said, "even when it costs you." "Yes." Luca looked at his sketchbook, then back at Vincenzo. Then he said, "I think I understand why my mother is not sure yet." He said it without any particular judgment, as a plain observation. It takes time to trust something that is also a risk. The data has to accumulate. "That's very true," Vincenzo said. "I have enough data," Luca said. He said it simply. And then he turned and walked toward the south gate, sketchbook under his arm, leaving Vincenzo standing in the November park with a torn shoulder and something in his chest that was too big for any name he had ever used. Isabella looked at Vincenzo. He looked back at her. "His shoulder really is worse," she said finally. "I know," he said. "We're taking you to Ferretti." "I know," he said. They walked together to the south gate. Luca was already there, waiting with the patience of someone who has always been willing to wait for the world to catch up. Pencil appearing from his pocket as if by reflex, beginning, even now, to draw something only he could fully see. 3 months later, on a Sunday in February, with snow threatening on the edges of the weather and the apartment warm with the smell of whatever Isabella had on the stove, Vincenzo Romano sat at the kitchen table and learned, with enormous difficulty and almost zero success, to fold a paper crane. Luca sat across from him and directed the process with the focused clarity of a surgeon observing a resident. "You're going too far on the inside reverse fold," he said. "Stop before it creases there." He reached across and moved Vincenzo's thumb 1 precise centimeter. "Now." Vincenzo followed the instruction. The paper moved correctly. "Good," Luca said. He returned to his own crane, which was already half assembled. "Don't let him push you toward the 1,000-crane challenge," Isabella called from the kitchen. "He has been waiting for a willing participant." "It is not a challenge," Luca said without raising his voice. "It is a tradition. 1,000 cranes earns one wish. I have made 427. "And what are you wishing for?" Vincenzo asked. Luca examined his crane. Then Vincenzo. Then his crane again. "I have not finalized it," he said. "I am still assessing." He made a careful fold. "But I think it may already be coming true." He set his finished crane on the table between them with the precision of someone placing something important. Vincenzo looked at it. Small. White. Perfect. He picked up his unfinished paper, found the fold where Luca had moved his thumb, and continued. From the kitchen, the sound of the stove. The smell of something good. Isabella, humming something low and tuneless and familiar. "Can I draw you?" Luca asked. "Yes," Vincenzo said. Luca opened his sketchbook to a fresh page and began. He drew for 22 minutes, Vincenzo counted, the way Luca had taught him, because counting made the time feel purposeful. And when he finished, he turned the sketchbook around. Vincenzo looked at the drawing. It was him. Unmistakably him, in a way a photograph would have captured but not conveyed. The line of the jaw, the angle of the shoulder in its sling, the particular quality of the eyes, something in them that the drawing had caught and held, something that was not hardness and not softness, but whatever comes after both of those things when a person has lived long enough and been changed enough and found, finally, something worth the changing for. Do you like it? Luca asked. Very much, Vincenzo said. His voice came out rough at the edges. Luca took the sketchbook back, looked at the drawing once more, then looked at Vincenzo with the full, direct, unguarded gaze that had assessed him from the beginning, that had counted panels and tiles and heartbeats, and done its own precise math about whether Vincenzo Romano was someone worth the risk of trusting. I've been thinking about what you said in the park, Luca said, about why you protected me the first time. Yes, Vincenzo said. You said it was because I was a child and I was in danger, and that was enough. He turned his pencil over in his hands. I've been applying that principle to other situations to see if it holds generally. Does it? Yes, Luca said. I think it is a good principle. Simple, reliable, doesn't require additional information. He set the pencil down. I have added it to my list. Your list of things that are true? He picked up his finished crane from the table and turned it over once, inspecting the folds. You are on the list, too, as a person who can be counted on. In the kitchen, Isabella had stopped humming. Then, after a moment, she began again. Vincenzo Romano looked at the crane in his son's hands, at the boy who had counted the ceiling panels in a hospital room and the tiles around a fountain and the beats of a stranger's heart, who had assembled the data with the rigor of a scientist and arrived at his own verdict in his own time. At the apartment that was warm and real and built out of love and will by a woman who had been braver than him for 6 years and never stopped. He turned his half-finished crane in his hands, found the fold, made it correctly. Outside, the first snow of February had started. It came down quietly, in the way of things that do not need to announce themselves, covering the city in something clean. Inside, the crane took shape. Thank you for staying with this story until the very end. If it moved you, please take a moment to subscribe, leave a like, and share this with someone who needs to hear it today. Your support is what keeps these stories alive. And if you want to go even further, you can buy the channel a coffee using the link in the description below. Every single one means the world to us. We will see you in the next story.